Have you ever felt that someone appears on your path just when you're the most tired, and that their mere presence can change your destiny? Well, listen to what happened to me, because even today I still wonder if it was real or a message from heaven. And before I tell you, I ask you something. Subscribe right now to this channel and stay until the end, because what you're about to hear might make you doubt everything you think you know about the road. It was past midnight when I started up my delivery truck, an old blue International with more scars than I had myself. I had dropped off some boxes of spare parts at a repair shop in Querétaro, and now the toughest route awaited me, loading at dawn at a plant in Leon. The sky was heavy with clouds, and the rain, which had begun as a timid drizzle, had now turned into a curtain that barely let me see the broken line of the asphalt. It wasn't the first time I drove through a storm, but that night there was something different. The air was so heavy that even the roar of the engine sounded muffled, as if the road itself wanted me to stop. Sleep weighed down my eyelids, so I decided to stop at a gas station I knew well, one of those that looked like oases in the middle of nowhere, a flickering neon sign, an OXXO open, and a couple of truckers leaning against the store sipping cheap coffee to trick sleep. While they filled my tank, I went inside to buy something to keep me awake. As soon as I crossed the door, the smell of burnt coffee greeted me, and among the shelves of snacks and candies I saw a figure that froze my blood, an elderly woman, wrapped in a gray habit, with a white veil barely covering her graying hair. She didn't move. She stood still, motionless, as if time didn't affect her. Her hands were clasped, and her eyes were fixed on an invisible point, beyond all of us. I stared at her, and a thought crossed my mind. What the hell is a nun doing alone, in the middle of the night, at a deserted gas station? I swallowed hard and approached her with respect. "Good evening, Mother. Are you all right?" I asked, with the calmest voice I could. She slowly turned her head. Her face was lined with deep wrinkles, but her eyes were the strangest thing. They shone with tenderness, yes, but also with a kind of emptiness, as if they were trapped in two different realities. "I'm lost. I need to go back, but I don't know where I am," she said in a thread of voice that trembled like branches in the storm. At that moment a chill ran down my back. It wasn't normal. No one, absolutely no one, should be in that situation. I asked if she remembered the name of her convent, and after a long silence she told me she thought she lived in one with a garden full of bougainvillea, a statue of St. Francis, and a very old bell that rang at dawn. I thought about it. I had passed several times by a convent in Puebla with those characteristics. Could it be that one? Or was she just confused? While she spoke, my watch struck 1 in the morning. I had to be in Leon before dawn, otherwise I'd get a penalty that would hurt my pocket. But seeing her there, so fragile, trembling in the middle of the storm, I imagined she could be my mother, or yours. What would I have wanted someone to do in my place? I took a deep breath and held out my hand. "Mother, if you trust me, get in the truck. We're going to find your convent. I don't know how, but I'll take you home." She looked at me with tears welling in her eyes and whispered, "God put you in my path, son." I helped her climb into the cab and started the engine. Outside, the storm broke into lightning and thunder, but inside the truck there was a reverent silence, as if the most important delivery of my life had just begun. But who was that woman really? A lost nun? Or something else? Subscribe and stay until the end, because I promise you the answer will chill your blood. The woman, who told me her name was Sister Clara, settled by the window and stared into nothingness. I drove slowly, more attentive to her than to the road itself. I tried to make conversation. "How long ago did you leave your convent?" She took a while to answer, as if the question had awakened her from a trance. "I left, not long ago, but sometimes I forget time. Sometimes I get lost," she whispered. Her words pierced my chest. She wasn't just a lost nun. She was a woman fighting against her own memories. I kept driving toward Puebla, though every kilometer took me farther from my original route. Inside, the battle was brutal, the fear of losing my job against the need not to leave her alone. We passed Huamantla around 3 in the morning. I stopped at a small rest stop so she could use the bathroom. While I waited outside, I took the chance to call several convents. No one knew anything about a missing Sister Clara. But when I called an old convent on the outskirts of Puebla, the voice of a sister on the other end broke into tears. "Did you say you have Sister Clara with you?" Bring her immediately. We thought she would never return. I hung up, my heart racing. Yes, she was real. She wasn't a ghost or an illusion. Or at least that's what I wanted to believe. When she came back to the cab, I told her firmly, "Mother, we're heading home. The sisters are waiting for you." She smiled faintly and closed her eyes, as if at last she could rest. I took the wheel again, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something strange was floating in the air. I told the woman my name was Damian, though on the road almost everyone calls me El Faro, not because I shine much, but because I always end up finding paths others don't see. I drive a medium delivery truck, a blue International that already knows by heart the potholes of State Route 19, that strip of asphalt that cuts through sugarcane fields, sun-scorched hills, and little towns that smell of fresh-baked bread at dawn. That night it rained as if the sky wanted to put out the world. I had picked her up at a roadside gas station on the outskirts of Valle Verde, where the neon of the coffee shop flickered like a sore throat. She wore a gray habit, a white veil, and a gaze that seemed to search for something not visible to the eye. She told me her name was Sister Clara, and that she needed to return to her convent, a place with bougainvillea, an old bell, and an image of St. Francis near the gate. I don't know why, but my eyes burned. Maybe because, deep down, I too had been searching for years for the way back to some place. I made the decision right there, to let her into the cab. I knew that straying off would cost me money, time, and maybe a scolding from my supervisor. But some loads weigh more than boxes. I adjusted the rearview mirror, turned on the defogger, and gripped the wooden rosary hanging from the mirror, a gift from a woman in San Jacinto after I returned her a wallet with documents. Sister Clara closed her eyes and sighed, as if the engine were a lullaby and the rain, prayers. The road to San Aurelio, the closest town to the convent I had in mind, opened between shadows. I remembered a delivery order that had once made me detour toward a high area called Silent Hill. In those hills, I had been told, there was an old convent, Santa Lucia, founded when the country was still learning to pronounce its own name. I wasn't sure if it was hers, but it was the closest to her description. The windshield wipers thudded with a heartbeat rhythm. Sister Clara looked out the window and, from time to time, touched her chest with her fingers, as if recalling a prayer or the fragment of a melody. I asked her if she had family, and she said her family were the boys and girls she had cared for over the years, that she had witnessed many farewells, and that, for some time now, words had hidden behind a curtain of fog. A lump rose in my throat. I thought of my mother, who is no longer here, and of the things I never told her because I was always in a hurry. I wanted to call someone to confirm the destination, so I grabbed the radio I used to talk to other drivers. The channel filled with static. I turned the dial and heard the hoarse voice of Sombra, a colleague who drives a red Torton and who, for years, has warned me where there are checkpoints or landslides. "Pharaoh, are you on the 19? His voice crackled. "I'm heading toward San Aurelio," I replied. "I've got a nun who needs to return to her convent. Do you know if Santa Lucia is still up in Silent Hill?" There was silence. Then a surprised sigh. "They say it is, but hardly anyone goes up at night. There's fog, feral dogs, and something else." "What else?" "Interference. Voices on the radio that don't belong to anyone," said Sombra, lowering his voice as if the night could hear him. "Maybe it's just the mountains playing tricks. If you go up, honk 3 times when you see the stone arch. They say that way they let you in. They say." I hung up with a strange taste in my mouth. Sister Clara looked at me. "Don't be afraid, son. Fear always comes before danger, to wear you out." I kept driving. The signs reflected bluish light against the puddled pavement. At kilometer 47, I saw something that tensed my shoulders. In the distance, behind us, a black sedan with its lights low. It kept its distance, like a patient fisherman. I didn't speed up, didn't slow down either. I just held the wheel firmly and kept watching, every few seconds, the gleam of those headlights appearing and disappearing in the mirrors. The road climbed. The rain weakened, but the air grew colder. Fog began to form at the base of the hills, like foam spilling out of the world. Sister Clara asked for water. I handed her a bottle without turning fully. The sedan was still there. I thought of calling Sombra again, but something told me keeping silent was better. We passed an old bridge, one of those with rusted railings and cracked concrete planks. The fog pressed against the windshield, and there came a moment when the road disappeared, as if a giant hand had wiped it away in one stroke. I slowed down until it felt like the truck was moving by instinct. Then, from the radio, came a woman's voice, very low, with an echo, saying, "Damian." My blood froze. That voice wasn't Sombra's, nor anyone I knew on the route. Sister Clara opened her eyes and looked at me, attentive, as if she had heard it too. I swear I hadn't touched the dial. The volume was at the same point. "Did you hear that, Mother?" "I heard your name," she replied, without a hint of doubt. Sometimes, when destiny wants to make sure you don't get lost, it calls you by your name. I swallowed hard. The bones in my hands cracked against the wheel. For an instant I thought of turning back to Valle Verde, leaving the woman with the police, and continuing on my route. But there was something in her serenity that held me up, as if that calm had roots deeper than I could understand. The black sedan reappeared in the distance, blurred among the fog. Suddenly, a shadow crossed the road. I braked hard. The inertia made the boxes in the back dance. I felt the dry thud of one box against another and the lash of the seatbelt across my chest. The International screeched, and the water on the asphalt splashed up like a school of fish. In front of us, standing in the middle of the lane, was a mixed-breed dog, soaked, with one light eye and one dark. It didn't move. The sedan, behind, braked as well, keeping its distance. I opened the door, stepped into the rain, and the dog didn't run. It looked at me with a calmness that disarmed me, as if it knew I wasn't going to hurt it. I whistled softly and gestured. It approached, trembling. In the time that encounter lasted, the black sedan slowly reversed and vanished into the cold vapor. For the first time all night, I felt we weren't alone, that someone else was with us, though I couldn't tell if it was a good or bad presence. I lifted the dog into the cab, at my feet. It smelled of mud and fear. Sister Clara smiled tenderly. God also sends guardians with 4 legs. "Let's hope it doesn't bite," I said, trying a joke to chase off the chill. The fog began to part like a hurried curtain. And then I saw it, a stone arch, covered in vines, with a tiny cross at the keystone, just where Sombra had said. I honked once, twice, 3 times. On the third, the echo came back slower, as if the mountain were waking up. Beyond the arch, the road narrowed, turning into a dirt path. I drove on patiently, feeling every stone beneath the tires as if it were a reminder that the easy roads rarely leave you with a story worth telling. The convent appeared all at once, as if it had been dropped from the sky. Tall, old walls, a black gate with a lamb carved in the center, bougainvillea glowing from the damp, and a massive, cracked bell, silent and noble. I parked in front of the gate and honked once, softly. In a few seconds, a lamp lit up at the back of the courtyard and, from the porter's lodge, a young woman in a dark habit covered herself with a plastic cape and ran toward the gate. "Good evening," she shouted over the rain. "Who is it?" "I've brought Sister Clara," I replied, lowering the window. "I found her at a gas station in Valle Verde. She's confused. She says this is her home." The young woman opened the gate with trembling hands. When she saw Sister Clara in the seat, she brought both hands to her mouth, as if trying to hold back the scream rising from her chest. "Mother Clara," she whispered. "We thought that—" She didn't finish the sentence. She simply motioned us in. I got out, went around the truck, and helped Sister Clara down. Her steps were short and fragile, but determined, guided by a memory that lived more in her heart than in her head. The young woman led us through a damp stone corridor, with pots and shadows, to a hall where 2 other sisters awaited with towels and thermoses of tea. They invited me to come in. I hesitated, thinking of my schedule, my supervisor, the cargo. The dog looked at me as if asking whether he was invited too. "Let him in," said one of the sisters. "No one stays outside here if they arrive in the rain." Inside smelled of bread, soap, wet leaves. Sister Clara sat in a carved wooden chair, with a small cushion. One of the older sisters, with clear eyes and hands like a guitarist, held her cheeks gently. "You came back," she said. "Did you get lost?" "I got lost and they found me," Sister Clara whispered, glancing at me for an instant. The young woman who opened the gate introduced herself as Sister Susanna. She offered me tea and asked me to wait a moment. The Mother Superior wanted to speak with me. I sat by a table with a blue-checkered tablecloth. The dog curled up under my chair. The rain in the courtyard sounded like a conversation in another language. I looked at my hands, dirty from the wheel and potholes, and felt clumsily out of place, like a stranger stepping barefoot into a room where everyone knows each other. The Mother Superior appeared shortly after. She wasn't very tall, but her presence filled the hallway. She wore a wooden crucifix on her chest and carried a serene expression that, far from intimidating, disarmed you. She shook my hand with sincere gratitude. "Thank you for bringing her, son," she said in a clear voice. Sister Clara suffers episodes. Sometimes her memories get disordered. She goes out walking and forgets the way back. But she has always returned, until this time. This time took longer. I didn't know what to say, except for a simple truth. I couldn't leave her. And you didn't. That alone is already a miracle in a world that is always in a hurry. They explained that they would examine her, let her rest, and if I needed, I could wait until the rain cleared to go back down the mountain in daylight. I clenched my teeth. My deliveries. My schedule. My supervisor. I breathed deeply. I'll wait until it clears a bit. Then I'll resume my route. The dog wagged his tail, happy to be in a dry place. Sister Susanna brought him a bowl of water and some crumbs of bread. I petted the animal's back and discovered a scar shaped like a half-moon. I don't know why, but that mark unsettled me, like a symbol I didn't yet understand. An hour passed. The rain became a whisper. I gathered my things to leave. The Mother Superior returned, with a look I couldn't read. "Damian?" she asked, like someone knocking at the door of a secret. "Yes, Mother. Sister Clara wants to see you before you go." They led me to a room with colored stained glass. Sister Clara was lying down, covered, her skin less pale. When she saw me, she smiled as if she had been waiting for that image all night. "Damian," she said, with a firmness she hadn't shown before, "thank you for finding me." "You let yourself be found," I replied, trying not to break. She extended her hand and offered me a small object wrapped in a handkerchief. I took it. It was an old medal of St. Lucia, with edges worn by years of fingers. "Keep it in your truck. If you ever get lost, remember that not all roads are marked with signs." "Thank you, Mother," I whispered. "May I ask?" "Ask." "Why did the radio say my name?" The question floated in the air like a thin thread. Sister Clara looked at the window, where the rain drew corridors that led nowhere. When one needs to return, life finds a way to call. Sometimes it does so with voices. Sometimes with dogs. Sometimes with people who weren't in your plans, but who become your map. I left with the medal in my pocket, the dog behind me, the dawn already unraveling into a pale gray. Sister Susanna walked me to the gate. "What's your companion's name?" she asked, looking at the dog. "I don't know. He arrived without a name." "Then give him one. Those who walk with you deserve to be called." I looked at the dog. I thought of the fog, the stone arch, the voice on the radio. His name will be Echo. I started the engine. The dirt road rattled under the tires. At the exit of the arch, I honked once, out of habit and gratitude. We descended the mountain with the dawn being born on the hills, and the world seemed brand new. In the rear-view mirror, the bougainvillea blazed like fresh embers. And what if I told you that the most dangerous part of that night wasn't in the mountains, but down below, in the valley, waiting for us with patience? Subscribe and stay until the end, because what I discovered upon returning to the route changed me forever. As I rejoined Route 19, I checked the dashboard. I was late. I had to deliver a shipment of spare parts to the La Pradera Industrial Park, on the border of San Aurelio and Campo Bravo, before noon. I looked at the phone clock and felt the familiar sting of guilt. I called my supervisor, Ramiro, a hardened man with a sandpaper voice who, when he wants, can be kind. When he wants. "Where the hell are you, Pharaoh?" "I'm coming down from the mountains." I took a lost nun to her convent. Saved her night. I got sidetracked. The silence on the other end told me more than a sermon. Then, the dry blow of his verdict. You're late. The client's angry. You know what happens if you arrive after 12. I know, I replied without excuses. But I did what I had to do. Sometimes the right thing doesn't pay the bills, he said, and hung up. I breathed slowly. Echo, at my feet, yawned and rested his snout on my boots. I stroked his ear. I felt no regret, only anxiety for the consequences. The road leveled out. In the distance, the sugarcane fields gave way to industrial warehouses like giant shoeboxes. The sky had grown tired of raining and now seemed to forget what it had done. At the first toll booth, I noticed the black sedan again, in the lane beside me. Its windows were tinted, and there was a dent on the right fender. No doubt, it was the same one. My stomach knotted. I paid, accelerated discreetly, and the sedan kept just the right distance to stay in my mirror without disappearing. I thought of taking a quiet detour toward the Los Fresnos neighborhood, where there are workshops and narrow streets. If the sedan wanted to follow me, it would have to stick so close I'd see right into its soul's license plate. I turned onto a ramp almost no one uses and clenched my teeth. For a moment, I lost the sedan. The low houses, clotheslines with laundry, bicycles leaning against damp walls, everything seemed unrelated to my drama. Echo straightened up, alert. I took 2 streets, 3, 4. As I exited again onto the main road, at the entrance to the industrial park, the sedan reappeared, coming through another artery, as if it had known where to wait for me. This time it stayed behind me, closer. A shiver crawled up my neck. The traffic light turned yellow. I braked firmly, feeling the weight of the load. The sedan braked right behind me, too close. A man rolled down the window and looked at me without expression, as if his face were a poorly cut mask. He said nothing. He made no gesture. Green. I moved forward. The sedan didn't. It stayed. And then, simply, it disappeared into the sea of cars. I arrived at the warehouse 12 minutes late. 12. For someone unfamiliar with this world, it may seem like nothing. For a client who measures time in money, it's an ocean. The manager, a young man in an orange vest with a nickname painted on his helmet, Chamuco, received me with that mix of annoyance and humanity that only those who also suffer pressure from above can have. "They're going to scold you," he said, lowering his voice. "But if you help me unload quickly, I'll log the arrival an hour earlier." "You can do that?" "Today I can," he winked. Sometimes the world also takes a detour to help. We unloaded as if the clock were chasing us with a machete. Echo kept watch from the cargo door. In 20 minutes, the spare parts were stacked. The system recorded the time Chamuco decided I deserved. He patted me on the shoulder and told me to take care. I nodded, with the gratitude reserved for anonymous heroes. As soon as I left the park, the phone vibrated. Unknown number. Damian. It was a woman's voice, serene, ancient, the Mother Superior's. "Sister Clara wants you to know something." "Is she all right?" "She's calm." She remembered a name. She said, "Lorenzo." I didn't know what to do with that name. I repeated it, as if savoring it might reveal its secret. "Lorenzo," she said. "Lorenzo hid the bell, so they won't find it." I looked at the rear-view mirror, as if the black sedan could give me the answer. Echo let out a faint whimper, uneasy. "Is it important?" I asked. "I don't know," the mother replied. "But when memories return with a name, they usually bring a thread worth following. If you pass by again, we'd like to talk to you. Maybe you can help us untangle something that has been knotted for years." "I'll come back," I said, before hanging up. Lorenzo. I kept that word stuck to my tongue. And then, as if the day had been waiting for me to make space, the fuel light came on. There wasn't much left. I pulled into a station on the outskirts, one with a sad cafe and bathrooms cleaner than they looked. While they pumped diesel, I bought 2 rolls and a coffee. I gave one to Echo. I sat at a Formica table, staring out the window. On the glass, my face with dark circles and a nameless dog, who now had a name. A voice behind me made me turn. "Are you El Faro?" It was a delivery driver from another company. White helmet, rain jacket, trimmed beard. I knew him by sight. Malacara. A nickname that sounds like a threat, but, on him, is just a joke. "Depends who's asking," I replied. "They were looking for you." A guy in a black sedan. He asked about you at the Campo Bravo booth. Said he was from the insurance company. Had a folder. But he didn't know your second last name, or the unit number. You could see the hunger in his eyes, not the job. My throat went dry. Malacara leaned closer and lowered his voice. "It's not the first time that Carr has circled around colleagues. La Pantera got tailed the same way 2 weeks ago. They made her stop with a fake patrol car and emptied half her load. I only got lucky because I was in a convoy with El Botus." "You think they were sizing me up?" I asked, without looking at my coffee. "I do. And I think something scared them off. Because just when they were going to cut you off in Los Fresnos, they backed out like they'd seen a light." "Were you carrying something?" I swallowed. Looked at Echo. Looked at my hands. "I was carrying a person who needed to go home," I said, and that was all I wanted to say. Malacara patted me on the shoulder, left some coins on the table, and left. I stayed with the cooling coffee, the half-eaten roll, the hum of the station as backdrop. I pulled the St. Lucia medal from my pocket. I ran it through my fingers. Felt a vibration on the radio. I turned it on out of habit. Static. And, for a second, the same woman's voice, very low, as if coming from a room with thick walls. "Damian." This time they added a word. "Return." Why would she want me to return? And what the hell does Lorenzo have to do with a hidden bell? Subscribe and stay until the end, because I'm going to tell you what I found when I went back to Santa Lucia, and why that decision put me in the sights of someone who doesn't forgive. I drove the rest of the day like someone walking through a dark room with arms outstretched. I avoided the long Route 19 and took detours I could drive with my eyes closed. The old Huertas Road, the northern bypass that fits 2.5 trucks if nobody panics, and Molino Avenue, where at 5 in the afternoon the sun puddles in the windows. I made 2 more deliveries, and, when the clock struck 8, my phone vibrated. It was Ramiro. I braced for the sermon. "They're not docking you anything," he said, no greeting. The industrial park changed the schedule in the system. "You arrived on time." "What?" Slipped out of me, clumsy. Don't ask. Sometimes the world gives you a break. Tomorrow's light. Just 2 stops and back to the yard. Rest. He hung up. I wanted to celebrate, but instead of joy I felt a bigger question opening in my chest. Who had pulled the strings so that suddenly the system smiled at me? I gave thanks inside, not knowing to whom. That night I slept in the truck at the Los Perras stop, where the sodium vapor lamps color skin orange and the diner's music never quite stops. Echo snored with a full belly. I looked at the metal on the dashboard until sleep overtook me. I dreamed of bells ringing underground, of voices calling my name, of a black sedan that wouldn't start, of bougainvillea bleeding light. Dawn found me with thermos coffee and leftover bread. I decided that, before my 2 light stops, I'd head back up to Silent Hill. It wasn't in my route or my pay, but I could no longer pretend I hadn't been told, "Return." Sometimes orders don't come from the office. Echo jumped in. The International coughed and then sang. The mountain smelled of washed earth. The stone arch greeted us without questions. This time I didn't honk. The gate was ajar, as if the dawn had left it open for us. I knocked on the wood with my knuckles. Sister Susanna appeared, disheveled, with the smile of someone who doesn't know if she's still dreaming. "We knew you'd come back," she said, as if the mountain had told her. "The mother is waiting." They led me to a small prayer room, more intimate than the previous one. On the walls, ex-votos from people who had been saved from road accidents, difficult births, storms. I stared at one that showed a truck dodging a giant rock. "Thank you, St. Lucia, for not letting the world fall on me," it said, in crooked letters with a sincere heart. The Mother Superior had an old notebook on the table, its pages stained with damp, names written in ink. "This is the Belfry Register," she said. Every time the bell was rung, the name, date, and reason were noted. Years ago, when the theft of old pieces began, many churches and convents hid their bells to prevent them from being taken. The one here, it was hidden in a hurry. And there's a gap in the record. An entire month missing. Exactly the month when a man named Lorenzo worked here as a carpenter. Do you believe that he? We don't know. But Sister Clara repeated his name this morning as if it were a key. This bell is a symbol and a promise. Without it, the town stopped hearing the dawn. The wooden floor creaked. Echo perked up his ears. From the courtyard came a brief chime, metal against stone. We looked at each other. There was no bell. But the sound existed. I swear it. Sometimes, said the mother, the echo rings before the voice. I opened my mouth to speak, and, at that instant, we heard knocks at the gate. 3 sharp, urgent knocks. Sister Susanna went to open. I peeked through the window. Outside, drenched in sweat despite the cool air, was Malacara. His eyes were wild. Pharaoh, he said, almost breathless. They followed you. The black sedan. They reached the curve at the lookout, saw the arch, and left as if something invisible had stopped them. They didn't come up. But they went down lighting a cigarette and saying your name, like they were chewing on a debt. How do you know they said my name? Because I hid behind the honey seller's shack. I'm not brave, I'm curious. And I heard everything. The Mother Superior looked at him the way one looks at someone delivering bad news with the innocence of a mailman. That means we're not playing hide and seek, I said, throat tight. We're in a race. The mother nodded. She pushed the notebook toward me. Damian, if you're willing, we need help. There are few of us here, and most are elderly. We've been searching for the bell for years. Sister Clara was the last to see it hanging. If her memory chose you, maybe it's because you can take us where she can no longer go. I looked at the notebook, the letters warped by damp, the gap of a missing month, the name of a carpenter who could look like any man who works hardwood and earns blisters on his hands. I thought of the black sedan, of the hollow eyes of the man who stared at me at the traffic light, of the vertigo of feeling yourself on a list. I looked at Echo. He looked back at me as if to say I would decide, but he wouldn't leave me alone. I'm in, I said, and in saying it I knew something had shifted inside me, like a piece finally finding its slot. And what if the bell wasn't where everyone thought, but in a place so obvious no one dared to look? Subscribe and stay with me until the end. I'm going to open that notebook, follow Lorenzo's name, and step into a place where silence makes more noise than a stampede. The Mother Superior handed me the notebook with steady hands, as if entrusting me with a map on which something greater than a lost object depended. The pages were stained, some brittle, with notes in sepia ink. I scanned the names of those who had rung the bell over the years. Weddings, baptisms, funerals, patron feasts. It was like listening to the heartbeat of a town through its chimes. Then, suddenly, the void. An entire month with no entries. And right after, a change in handwriting. Tighter, more nervous. And there it was, written in the margin of a page. Lorenzo Carp. Resp maint. Carpenter? I murmured. Yes, said Sister Susanna. He came to the convent with the excuse of repairing floors and windows, but after that month he disappeared without a trace. Since then, so did the bell. The dog, Echo, stirred uneasily under the table. He perked his ears and looked toward the door. I felt it too, a shift in the air, as if the hallway were breathing differently. The Mother Superior was silent for a few seconds, then told me, Damian, what we're looking for isn't just metal. It's the voice of this place. Without the bell, the dawn here was silenced. And when faith goes quiet, darkness speaks louder. I didn't know what to answer. I was just a delivery driver with shipments to make, debts to pay, and an old truck that slipped its clutch if you treated it wrong. But there I was, with a damp notebook in my hands and a mystery that seemed intent on latching onto my destiny. Before I could process it, Malacara, the other driver who had arrived out of breath, rushed into the room. Pharaoh, he said. The black sedan didn't leave completely. They went down to the town and are asking about you. They have your name written on a paper. My skin bristled. The mother crossed herself calmly, but I felt my heart trying to burst out of my mouth. "What do they want with me?" I asked. "I don't know," Malakara replied, "but it's nothing good. Those guys aren't looking for insurance or an address. They're hunting." The Mother Superior looked at me intently, with a serenity that imposed itself. "If they're after the bell, it's because they know something we don't. And if your name came out of their lips, it means you're already part of this, whether you want it or not." Echo growled. I gripped the notebook, and at that moment I decided, then we'll find it before they do. Sister Susanna nodded with a gesture of relief, as if she had been waiting for that answer from the start. We went out into the courtyard. The rain had stopped, but the air was soaked with humidity. We walked toward the empty belfry. Only the worm-eaten wooden structure remained, with frayed ropes hanging like dead veins. We climbed a narrow staircase. The wood creaked under our weight. At the top, I leaned out the window. From there, the valley looked like a gray sea covered in mist. But what caught my attention was a mark on the wall, behind the main beam, a carving in the shape of a half-moon. I touched it and felt the same texture as the scar on Echo's back. "What does this mean?" I asked. The mother observed it closely. "It's the mark Lorenzo used. It appeared on several old doors of the convent. It's like his signature." I crouched to check the floorboards. With a knock of my knuckle, I noticed a different hollow. Malakara handed me a metal bar, and I began to lift the board. Below was a compartment sealed with rusty nails. We pried it open together. There was no bell. There was a small wooden box, wrapped in a damp cloth. I carefully untied it. Inside, a bunch of old keys of different sizes. And a yellowed note, almost erased. "He who hears its echo will know where it truly rings. Lorenzo." Echo barked as if he understood. I froze. The bell wasn't there, but Lorenzo had left a clue. "He who hears its echo," I repeated. "What does it mean?" The mother closed her eyes for a moment. "It could be the tunnel." The word pierced me. What tunnel? Under the convent there are passageways. Old, used in times of war to hide. If Lorenzo wanted to hide the bell, he might have taken it down there. Malakara whistled, nervous. "And are we going in right now?" "There's no time," I said. "If the men from the sedan get here first, they won't just take the bell. They'll take the soul of this place." The mother nodded. "But you must know something. Not all tunnels have an exit. Some are traps." I breathed deeply. The rain had left a strange silence, as if the world were holding its breath. I hugged the notebook, pocketed the keys, and stroked Echo's head. "Then let's go to the tunnel." But what do you think we really found under those ancient walls? Subscribe and stay until the end, because what was hidden wasn't just a bell, but a secret someone has wanted to bury for generations. They led us to a stone corridor, damp and narrow, lit only by old oil lamps. Sister Susanna walked ahead with a bunch of keys, while Echo, ears alert, sniffed every corner as if he already knew the way. The air was dense, soaked with humidity and the smell of earth asleep for centuries. The tunnel entrance was behind a low wooden door reinforced with iron nails. The right key screeched in the lock as if protesting being awakened after so long. When the gate opened, a cold draft hit our faces. We went down narrow steps covered in moss. The light barely outlined the shapes. Echo growled now and then, as if detecting something beyond the visible. I felt cold sweat running down my back despite the icy air. "This is where they hid the persecuted," the Mother Superior explained softly. "No one has come down in decades." We advanced through a narrow passage. The walls were covered in marks, carved symbols, crooked crosses, repeated half-moons. I recognized Lorenzo's signature in several corners. The wood of a side hatch bore the same half-moon I had found in the belfry. "He passed through here," I whispered. We pushed the hatch. Behind it, a small room, almost empty, except for an improvised altar, a rusted iron cross, burned-down candles, and an old notebook, as deteriorated as the register we had seen upstairs. I opened it carefully. The pages contained drawings, not words. sketches of the bell, pulley diagrams, tunnels, and location marks. And, at the end, a phrase written in shaky handwriting. If the bell does not ring, darkness rules. I swallowed hard. Malakara looked at me, pale. This feels more like a warning than a record. Suddenly, Echo stiffened and barked toward the corridor. The mother motioned for silence. Then we heard it. Footsteps. They weren't ours. Heavy, firm steps, advancing from the tunnel entrance. Turn off the lamp, I ordered in a low voice. We stayed in shadows, barely breathing. The steps came closer. The echo made them sound like hammer blows against stone. Then, a flash of a flashlight. It's them, Malakara murmured. The ones from the sedan. I pressed against the wall, my heart pounding against my ribs. The intruders descended with confidence, as if they knew exactly where they were going. We heard their voices. It's down here, said one. The bell is worth more than a truckload of gold. Don't lose it, replied another. I realized something. Those men weren't looking for faith, or history, or redemption. They were looking for money. And if they found us first, they wouldn't let us out of the tunnel. Echo growled again. I stroked his head, silently begging him to calm down. Sister Susanna pulled my arm and pointed to another side passage, narrower, barely visible in the darkness. We entered one by one, careful not to make a sound. The corridor sloped down further, into a vaulted space where the air felt heavier. There, in the middle of the gloom, we saw a different stone arch, sealed with thick planks and rusty chains. And in the center, carved into the rock, another half-moon. Here it is, I said without thinking. We tried to remove the planks, but they were rotten and at the same time hard as stone. Malakara and I pushed together until one of them split, revealing a space behind. A metallic chime echoed, faint, as if the vibration had been waiting years to be freed. Echo barked loudly. The mother crossed herself. My skin prickled all over. Behind those planks was the bell. I couldn't see it yet, but I knew it. Suddenly, we heard the footsteps again. Much closer. A flashlight lit up the wall of the side passage. A voice shouted, "There they are." The men from the sedan had found us. What would you do if you had to decide between saving yourself or protecting something that doesn't belong to you, but means everything to others? Subscribe and stay until the end, because what happened in that tunnel was more than a struggle for a bell. It was a battle between greed and faith. The beam of the flashlight blinded us for a second. 3 shadows advanced decisively, boots striking the damp stone. I recognized the hoarse voice of the same man who had watched me at the traffic light from the black sedan. "I told you we'd follow him," he murmured. And look, they came straight to the prize. Malakara stepped forward, trying to block the narrow passage. "You're not getting through," he shouted, with more courage than sense. One of the men let out a laugh. The beam of the flashlight lit up a weapon in his hand. A short barrel, cold, ready to silence voices. Sister Susanna gasped and backed against the wall, clutching a crucifix. The Mother Superior, on the other hand, didn't move. Her eyes were fixed on the intruders, serene like a lighthouse in a storm. I looked at the half-sealed stone arch. Behind those planks was the bell. And somehow I understood, if they took it, nothing would be left. Not just an object would be lost, but the voice of a town, the memory of generations. "Damian," said the mother firmly, "open the way." My breath became a drum. I took the iron bar still in my hand and struck the planks. Echo barked furiously, pushing with me. Malakara held off the men's attempts to push through. The first bullet shattered against the wall, leaving the smell of gunpowder in the damp air. "Hurry!" Malakara roared. With one last push, a plank gave way. The opening released a cold air and, with it, a vibrant metallic sound that didn't come from my blows. It was an echo. A deep echo, as if something had resonated from the depths of the earth. The men froze, bewildered. The one with the gun lowered his arm for an instant. "Did you hear that?" asked one, nervous. That's when I saw the bell. It wasn't as large as I'd imagined, but its bronze was blackened by time. It bore a carved half-moon and, on the lower edge, a name, Lorenzo. Sister Susanna covered her mouth, astonished. The mother closed her eyes, tears brimming. "It was always here," she whispered. The intruders reacted. The man with the gun shouted, "Grab it, quickly." I stepped between them and the bell, raising the iron bar like a sword. "You'll have to go through me." The man with the gun aimed straight at my chest. Echo leapt, growling, and bit his arm. The shot veered off and ricocheted against the vault, filling the tunnel with thunder and dust. Malacara lunged at another, knocking him against the stones. The third backed away, hesitant. The bell vibrated again, without anyone touching it. The echo spread through the tunnel like an invisible wave. The intruders clutched their ears, stunned. My chest tightened, but I also felt a strange energy running through my veins. The mother raised her voice amidst the uproar. "This place does not belong to you. The bell calls the keepers, not the thieves." The intruders shouted, trying to advance, but every step toward the bell seemed heavier, as if the very air rejected them. One fell to his knees, his face contorted, muttering that he heard voices. Another dropped his weapon and fled into the darkness. The man from the sedan, furious, resisted, but his movements were clumsy, like he was fighting an invisible enemy. Echo wouldn't let go, biting his sleeve. I pulled him back and raised the iron bar. The man looked at me, pure hatred in his eyes. "This isn't over," he spat, and stumbled away, leaving a trail of blood on the stones. The tunnel fell silent, except for our ragged breathing and the steady drip of water from the walls. The bell kept vibrating softly, as if it were breathing. Sister Susanna knelt before it. "It's alive," she whispered. I dropped the bar, exhausted. I looked at the mother. "What do we do now?" She looked at me gravely. "The bell must ring again. But to do so, someone has to carry it back up. And not just anyone can. The one who finds it must be the one to bear it." My stomach tightened. It wasn't just a discovery. It was a mission. A burden. One that had fallen on me without asking. Echo licked my hand, as if to tell me I wasn't alone. Do you think a simple delivery driver can carry a weight as great as the voice of an entire town? Subscribe and stay until the end, because what happened when we tried to bring the bell up is something I'll never forget. The silence of the tunnel was deceptive. We knew the men from the sedan could regroup at any moment, but still we stayed in front of the bell, not daring to touch it. Its dark surface seemed to absorb the little light we had. "We must get it out of here," the Mother Superior insisted. "The echo has awakened. If it doesn't ring again in the belfry, darkness will return." Malacara let out a nervous laugh. "With all due respect, Mother, this thing weighs like 3 truck engines. Who's going to haul it up?" The mother looked at me. She didn't say my name, but I understood. My heart shrank. I was a delivery driver, yes, used to carrying boxes, engines, machinery parts. But this was different. It wasn't just an object. It was a promise. I stepped closer, placed my hands on its edge. It was cold as ice, but at the touch I felt a faint heartbeat, as if it had a heart. I swallowed hard and pushed. The bell moved just a couple of centimeters, enough to make me understand that yes, I could carry it, but not with strength alone. "I'll do it," I said, looking at the others. "Not because I want to, but because it has already chosen me." Sister Susanna nodded with tears in her eyes. Malacara snorted. "Well then, Pharaoh, I'll help you, even if it breaks my back." Between the two of us we lifted it. The metal screeched against the stone. Echo barked, encouraging us. We moved toward the tunnel exit, every step a war against the weight. The bell seemed to want to sink us into the ground. The corridor narrowed. The air grew stifling. I felt my strength leaving me when a voice echoed in the shadows. "Higher up! Don't stop!" I froze. It wasn't any of the sisters, nor Malacara. The voice came from the tunnel itself, deep, steady. The mother closed her eyes, as if she recognized it. "It's Lorenzo," she whispered. A shiver ran through me. I looked back. No one. Only shadows. But the voice insisted. Don't drop it. I failed once too. Don't fail. My arms burned. I felt the weight would tear my shoulders off. Malakara was sweating as if he were in a desert. But we kept going. The voice, at every corner of the tunnel, guided us. One more step. Lean on the left wall. Don't look back. We climbed the steps. Outside, the storm had returned with fury. Lightning lit up the valley. The iron gate opened with a screech that pierced my bones. We brought the bell into the courtyard, under the rain. The sisters waiting began to sing an ancient hymn, as if that melody were the rope helping us lift the weight. The mother led us toward the empty belfry. Step by step, the effort was unbearable. My knees shook. My back screamed. Echo climbed beside us, pushing with his snout as if he believed he could help. At the top, we set the bell on the beam where it had once been. Malakara fell to his knees, gasping. I could barely breathe. The mother took the old rope and placed it in our hands. It's not enough to bring it back. It must ring. I looked at the rope, soaked, rough. I held it with both hands. I closed my eyes and remembered all the nights I had driven, afraid, tired, alone. I remembered Sister Clara, sitting in my truck, trusting me as if she had known me forever. I pulled the rope. The bell didn't move. A second attempt. Nothing. My hands bled against the rope's fibers. Then, the voice was heard again, close, as if standing right beside me. It's not your strength. It's your faith. I clenched my teeth, breathed deeply, and this time I didn't think of myself. I thought of everyone who had ever given me water on the road, food on a plastic plate, a place to sleep in the middle of nowhere. I thought of all the times I had been helped without asking. I pulled once more. The sound erupted. The bell thundered with an echo so deep I felt the ground tremble. The rain stopped for an instant, as if the world had gone silent to hear it. The bronze vibrated, and each toll seemed to rip shadows from the air. In the valley below, I saw the black sedan stopped. Its lights flickered, then simply went out. The men staggered out, as if they had lost their way. And they vanished into the darkness. At the convent, the sisters wept. The mother smiled serenely. Echo howled, joining the toll. I fell to my knees, exhausted, but with a light chest, as if I had stopped carrying something heavier than metal. The voice spoke one last time, just a whisper in my ear. Thank you, now I can rest. The name on the bell gleamed briefly, as if Lorenzo had been there all along. Do you think the bell ended up being just an object, or a trial that changed my life forever? The bell kept vibrating as the sun broke through the clouds, tinting the valley gold. The entire convent seemed to breathe differently. The bougainvillea glowed like freshly lit embers, and even the air smelled cleaner, as if the storm had carried away more than water. I was exhausted, with my hands bleeding from the rope, but I couldn't take my eyes off that bronze singing again after so many years. The Mother Superior placed a hand on my shoulder. Son, you fulfilled what Lorenzo could not. Now this place has a voice again. I could only nod, my heart overflowing. Echo lay at my feet, exhausted but proud, as if he had known from the beginning that we were destined for this. Malakara, sweating and with his shirt stuck to his body, slapped me on the back. Pharaoh, I've never seen a delivery driver ring a miracle. But let's be clear, if I ever tell this story, I'll say I pulled the rope too. We laughed, because after so much fear and tension, laughter was the only way not to break. The sisters offered us hot food, freshly baked bread and steaming soup that tasted like a grandmother's embrace. We ate in silence, with that peace that only comes after surviving something bigger than yourself. Before I left, Sister Susanna handed me a green beaded rosary, carved in wood. So you'll remember you don't drive alone, she said. Someone always travels with you. I hung it immediately on the International's rearview mirror, next to the medal Sister Clara had given me. The truck was no longer just a vehicle. It was a rolling sanctuary. When I said goodbye, the Mother Superior looked me in the eyes. Damian, don't look for logic in what happened. Sometimes the road gives you tests that aren't on the map. But remember this, every time you doubt, listen to the echo. I nodded, with a knot in my throat, and started the engine. The descent from the mountains felt lighter, as if the truck were floating. Echo slept beside me, his snout on my boots. The phone rang as I reached the valley. Unknown number. I answered cautiously. Damian. It was a voice I recognized instantly. Sister Clara. Mother. How are you? I asked, surprised. I am at peace. Clearer than in many years. I remembered my full name, I remembered my childhood, and I remembered that the bell had to ring again. I knew it when you told me you were going to help. I stayed silent, tears about to fall. Thank you for trusting me, I whispered. It wasn't me who chose you, son. It was the road. Never forget that. The call ended, but those words stayed etched in my chest. That afternoon I arrived at the delivery warehouse, expecting a scolding from Ramiro, my supervisor. Instead, he greeted me with a serious but different expression. The client from La Pradera called, he said. They want to congratulate you. I don't know what you did, but they say thanks to you their community has a reason to celebrate. What the hell happened, Pharaoh? I just smiled and replied. I only delivered something more important than boxes. Ramiro looked at me strangely, but said nothing more. He gave me the next day's orders and let me go. That night, parked at a rest stop, I took out Lorenzo's medal and held it in my hand. Echo lifted his head and looked at me with shining eyes, as if asking if it had all been worth it. I scratched him behind the ears and smiled. Yes, my friend. It was worth it. And there, while the radio played softly, a distant echo was heard again. A faint toll, impossible, because we were miles away from the mountains. But it rang. And I knew I would never be alone on the road again. And you tell me, if one day you had to choose between the route marked on the GPS or the path your heart shouts at you, what would you do? Subscribe, share this story, and leave your answer, because maybe the next echo will be for you.